Hello and welcome to Andy's Airgun Review. One of the most frequent questions the guys at Drapers are asked is how do you zero an air rifle scope? Now many of you out there will already know how this is done, and I do not want to patronise anyone at all. But often we take things for granted, so this tutorial video is aimed at trying to keep what can be quite a complex subject as simple as possible, to help some of the perhaps less experienced shooters, and who knows, sometimes we can all learn something. Firstly, I have a budget scope on a very good rifle of mine, and I've recently purchased a higher quality scope from Drapers. That's to allow this 18 foot-pound FAC BSA R10 Mark II to unleash its true potential, a gun I know to be very accurate. This is not a review of the best scopes out there, but naturally people will want to know why they should pay the extra money. Well, a good quality scope adds a lot of clarity, allows more lighting, and can also add better and easier adjustments, etc. Money spent on a good scope for a good rifle is money well spent. But don't forget the need to buy some good quality mounts too. Now I favour BKL mounts. There are many more quality ones out there, but I find the BKLs centre better than some others. Here is what I mean. If you look at this budget set of mounts that came with a low-cost scope, you can see if you fit them back to back on the rail, they don't line up perfectly centered. If, however, you line the BKLs up back to back, they line up perfectly. Hence, your scope is going to be aligned straight down the center of the barrel and not leaning over to one side. Hence, the BKL type is my preference, and I'm sure others would agree or disagree with me. Now, it's important to make sure your mounts are square on your reticle or crosshairs in your scope and not offset, so any holdover or hold under is also aligned correctly. With the BKLs, this is possible by fitting them loosely to the scope on a flat and level surface, and whilst looking through the scope, line the vertical crosshair with a plumb line outside. Then tighten the mount straps, finally secure and fit to the gun rail to suit your shooting position. If the mounts are not lined up to suit your position, you may have to repeat the process and find the right mounting position for the scope mounts on the scope, taking into consideration any magazine access requirements. You should then have a level scope ready to zero in. Alternatively, you can fit the bottom of the mount to the rail, level the gun off at this point, then, whilst keeping it level, check through the scope at the plumb line again to level your crosshairs. Then, holding it level, carefully clamp the top part of the mounts on, being careful to tighten a little at a time on each side. Keep checking the plumb line as you go, and do not tighten one side fully and then the other side. Take care also not to over tighten. Once the scope is fitted, you then have a couple of options to zero it in. You'll need to have some quality pellets to do this. Some people even weigh them to make sure they are consistent and uniform. The zeroing method I prefer is as follows. Method 1. With the help of a good gun rest or vice type setup, and either indoors or on a calm day, aim the gun at the target set out at your usual and preferred distance. This target can either be as shown or simply a piece of paper with a mark on it. Then take your first shot. As you can see in this setup example, the gun and scope are out of alignment and needs adjusting. Using the adjustments on the scope turrets, and there are several different types, and whilst the rifle is still firmly in place, adjust the scope until the crosshairs are centered on the point at which the pellet has just hit the target. Then move the rifle and center it again on the target bullseye or the mark on your paper. Then take your second shot. In this example, we've moved the shot closer to the bullseye, but we need to repeat the action again to finalize the adjustment. Once done, move the gun back onto the center of the target and take another shot. Hey presto! In this example, we are now on target and the scope is zeroed. This process may take more than just 1 or 2 shots, but shouldn't take more than, say, half a dozen or so. Then take a few more shots centered on the target just to make sure you have it set right. Method 2. This is naturally similar to method 1, but is used if you don't have the benefit of a good rest or vice type setup. You will need to make the gun as secure and stable as possible though. Again, take the first shot at a target or piece of marked paper. Note where the pellet is hit. In the example, it is too high and to the right, in which case we need to turn the adjustments on the turrets to the left and down to bring our shot nearer to the center of the target. Then shoot again. It's unlikely you'll be centered after one set of adjustments, so you'll need to repeat this process until your shot is hitting center. Again, take a few further shots after you think you're centered, just to be sure. There is a third method that involves the use of measurements to calculate the distance to target, along with distance from impact to center of aim point, then calculate how many clicks on your scope are required to zero. This is a perfectly viable method, but for purposes of simplicity, I'm not going into this method in any detail. As probably one for another time, if there's demand out there for it. I hope this has clarified the process of mounting and zeroing a scope, and your scope shouldn't need altering again for some time. That is, unless you're either changing your ammunition or knock your scope and gun out of alignment. But do check it from time to time to make sure you're still accurate.